Welcome back to the Biostasis Technologies podcast. Today, our guest is from an area that's been underserved by cryonics for quite a few decades, Mexico, in fact, South America in general. So I guess Diego Zarco is the man who's starting to change this. Welcome to the podcast, Diego.
Hello, Max. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to know a bit about people's background because cryonics is not a particularly popular subject. How did you find out about it as a real thing, and how did you come to actually be interested in doing something about it?
Well, at the beginning, all of my life, when I was a little kid, I was afraid of death. I guess, like most people, and everyone in my family, they are scientists. So my father used to tell me, "Oh, don't worry, my scientist friends are already working on a cure for death."
Ah,
So since an early age, I was like. I grew up believing that death is something that can be solved through science and through medicine. So it wasn't like a strange idea for me, the fact of eventually being able to live forever and longevity escape velocity. When I reached my teenage years and I finally found out that this was just something he used to tell me to like calm me down, I was really disappointed. But
I bet.
yeah, some years later, when I was like around 20 something years old, I started studying neuroscience and learning about, particularly, I was very amazed about the existence of the connectome, how the connections in the brain are what seems to make you be yourself, how it determines your personality, your memories, and well, it's most scientists will say it's an error to call it the soul, but for me it's like almost the same. It's maybe it's not the ethereal soul as religious people would like to call it, but it's basically you could uh, copy one person from one body to another, kind of like the movie Freaky Friday or something like that. So for me this was like, wow, this is something really interesting. This could be like some kind of backup for people to be able to survive even if we have an accident or our body is destroyed or anything like that. Unfortunately, at that time I was like, it's still gonna take decades before we have the technology to scan the whole connectome of a whole human being. So I was like, okay, this is something really interesting. I should keep learning about this, but there won't be the technology to do this until I'm maybe 60, 80 years old. But at least I was like comforted with the idea of knowing that, okay, very possibly we will have a solution for that before it's my time to need it. Um, and well, yeah, so I was comforted again about the idea of, okay, maybe if we do everything right, we will be able to reach longevity escape velocity. And then the pandemic came, and well, something that hit me really hard was my grandfather. He was 90 years old at the time, and he called me to his room and he told me, hey, I want to say goodbye to all of you because I just heard on TV that there is going to be a pandemic and they said that all the elderly people are going to die, so goodbye, because they said that I'm going to die, right? And when I saw him so depressed about this, and I started seeing the news about all the people who were dying during the pandemic. It, it was like, okay, we are so close to having the technology to survive death, basically, and yet we are still some years away from it. And I was like, if there could be a way to pause the human body, to have this extra time for the people who are getting sick with COVID right now, to be able to survive until that moment. And well, I had already read and was very interested with the studies in how the aldehyde stabilized cryopreservation for chemical fixation of the brain. So I was like, okay, maybe this will be the best shot. I have to learn more about this.
When did you first hear about it, though?
Well,
Do you
I had
remember?
to. I don't remember exactly what I read, but I had been following the website of the Brain Preservation Prize for basically maybe 10 years or something like that. The
Hmm.
first time I heard about this, they were trying to preserve a small mammal brain. I think it was a rat, and they hadn't been able to achieve it yet.
Was
Some
it,
years
was it
later,
about 10
but
years ago? 10, it's about 10, 12 years ago, something like that, a bit more.
yeah, it was like 2012 or something like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
very useful.
but by the time that the pandemic came, they had already achieved that goal, and even a large mammal, I think it was a pig. So I was like, okay, technology is progressing fast. This is maybe it's going to be possible. And well, I had also heard about cryonics, but I was not so sure about what the best approach was, if it was cryonics or aldehyde stabilized cryopreservation. So I started reading a lot about both of them. Um, and finally, I came to the conclusion that with the current technology, and most importantly, with the way that it's performed right now, cryonics could offer a much better chance, especially because maybe aldehyde stabilized preservation, it could be superior in a lab setting, for example, but in real life settings where most people die, well, from natural death instead
Hmm.
of euthanasia, I think I think cryonic is a better approach for most real life cases. So well, that's how I got into cryonics, and well, the other thing is that at that moment I was like, okay, it's going to be almost impossible to do this by myself. I'm not involved in this industry. Um, I know this is going to be really hard, but it's the most important problem that humanity is facing right now and for all our history, right? Being able to extend our lifespan and surviving death. So I was like, okay, I know this is going to take me many years to accomplish, but it's definitely worth it. So yeah, that was like a moment that I had to drop everything to dedicate myself to this.
Did you come over to the US or anywhere else to look at existing cryonics organizations?
Yeah, well, at that time, during the pandemic, it was impossible to travel. So I first booked an online tour of Alcor. It was, I think, 2022 or 2021, maybe. And when in 2023, when travel started normalizing and it was possible to travel without as much risk as before, I went to the Cryonics Institute. And well, that was my first approach in real life to one of the cryonics organization and what was being done.
Okay, so you got the video tour of Alcor, I think probably the one that I recorded some years ago, and then the real person tour of CI. Okay.
Yeah,
So then you went back to Mexico and decided you were going to actually step up and do something and start an organization. So you started, hope I pronounced this right, Criogenia Avanzada. Is that right?
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
tell
That's
us
right.
about that.
Well, Criogenia Avanzada, which translates to Advanced Cryonics, we are an SST cryonics company. With we have the capabilities for standby, stabilization, and transport with cryoprotection capabilities with perfusion with cryoprotectants. We have a medical team to perform the procedures. we also have a legal team and a customs agent to perform all the necessary paperwork for transport to the Cryonics Institute. We have a transport vehicle equipped with all the necessary equipment to perform the stabilization procedures, the cardiotomy to perform the cryoprotection perfusion. And well, we are located a couple of blocks away from the top hospitals in Mexico City and around 20 minutes or so from the airport. So yeah, basically what we are most interested in achieving is um, allowing people to have a quick response um, to start the cooling process immediately after the declaration of legal death. Because well, I was really interested in cryonics. I had heard about it for quite a long time, but my main concern with cryonics was that okay, what happens if somebody dies unexpectedly, or even from something that you know, okay, maybe these people has certain amount of time left, but if the medical team is not able to reach him immediately, it's really no much use, right? So I hadn't, for example, signed up myself with any cryonics company because my thinking was like, okay, if I live in Mexico, what's the use of signing up, right? And when I visit the Cryonics Institute, what struck me the most was that at that moment, when I went to visit the Cryonics Institute, I was like, okay, I'm interested in setting a cryonics facility in Mexico. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I didn't even have the money at the time. I was like, I'm gonna try to find investors, or I don't know how
That's
I'm
what I
gonna
want to
do it.
ask is how you funded this. Yeah, maybe we can
Yeah,
come back to
yeah.
that. Those how you funded it.
At that time, I was like, I didn't even had a plan because I didn't even knew how much it will cost. So I was like, okay, I need to go there and find out how it's done, how much will be needed, and if they will be willing to train us and help us. Um, but what struck me the most was that they told me, hey, instead of building a facility, you should focus first on creating the standby and transport capabilities. Because even
Right.
here in the USA, there are only two ambulances for the whole country, and I was like, okay, this is really worrisome, right? Because even if I lived in the USA, if I was not in Arizona or in Michigan or in the places where suspended animation has its vehicles, um, I would certainly have a really bad
Yeah.
outcome if it will take various hours or a day to reach me, right?
I think there's more than two in the US, but certainly could be more.
Yeah, well, and I
I
think
guess
that
they alone has two.
right now Alcor is building new teams, but I don't know how many of them they have right now. I think that nobody actually knows. Uh, but yeah, I think that is the most important thing in cryonics right now. Having yeah, as many emergency vehicles as possible, ideally at least in every major city of the world, and eventually in every small town too, just like we have ambulances today.
Because you can do a lot of procedures without having an emergency vehicle. You can take your equipment on a plane and you can rent a vehicle. Obviously, it's not as good as having one that's fully equipped. I think tomorrow Biostasis is setting the standard right now for really well equipped ambulances, and they have quite a few of them already. But you can manage without them. But obviously, it's certainly better to have them, especially in your main city, like where you're based. So, how did you put that together? How do you fund all this? Because it does take money. Are people volunteering their services? Do you have funding to pay people? How is that working?
Well, so far everything has been funded by myself, and in part, I think that cryonics kind of inspired me at the same time because, well, when the pandemic started, I was like, okay, I know I want to do this company to solve that. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I know that it's gonna be really difficult. So okay, if I'm going to do this, what do I need to learn, right? And one of the first things was, well, first of all, I need to learn more about how really big companies work, right? Um, and how can I learn more about this? I was like, okay, maybe I should start learning about the stock market, how public companies are funded, how they reach investors, stuff like that. So well, I started investing in the stock market mostly to learn about how these big companies work, and well, how they funded themselves and all of this. I was also interested in this because I knew that cryonics companies fund their long-term survival and the maintenance of the patients through investing in long-term in long-term assets. For example, the Alcor Patient Care Trust. So I was like, okay, I also need to learn about this because this will be what will enable the eventual revival of our patients and the long-term care of them. So I was like, okay, this is going to be a critical skill in the future. So well, I started with honestly, it was a very small amount when the pandemic started. But luckily, during the pandemic, all the assets were really down. Um, so and I used various kind of leverage to make it grow. I had also drew whenever I read about neuroscience and what was being done for whole brain emulation and all of that, I continually heard about how NVIDIA was enabling all of this and the artificial intelligence revolution various years before it finally happened, right? So that also helped a lot, and I think that everything coincided. The boom of artificial intelligence, which finally allowed me to make a big amount on that investment. It coincided with the reopening of flagged routes and being able to go to the USA in person to visit the Cryonics Institute. And at the same time, my grandfather getting much worse than before. So I was like, okay, if I'm gonna do this, the moment is now. And also, I was like, okay, I know I'm gonna risk everything on this. I might lose everything I've earned to start this company. Um, but I was like, okay, the life of my grandfather depends on this, and I'm gonna regret it for the rest of my life if I don't take this risk. So yeah, basically that's how we funded everything. And well, so far, it's how we've managed to create the emergency vehicle we have, to travel for all the trainings, to get all the equipment.
Are you charging for SST for people in the area to at least produce some income that way?
Yeah, well, right now we still don't have any clients. We haven't even accepted any clients. There have been
Hmm.
people who learn about what they are doing and they're like, "Oh, this sounds so interesting. Um, I'm interested to eventually." Well, because it's mostly young people, right? But so far, we haven't accepted anyone because we are still finishing setting up the last things. For example, right now we have all the equipment, but we still need to fix it inside the vehicle. We need to so that things don't move around when we are moving and stuff like that. Uh, this office, for example, we just got it last year, but we've been finishing furnishing it. We just finished the contract for members 2 weeks ago because we had to review all the legal parts and stuff. Yeah, so far we haven't accepted anyone because I want to make sure that everything is perfect uh,
Right. That makes
before
sense.
we do anything. Mostly because cryonics right now is something almost unknown in Mexico. So I want to make sure that when we start doing this, the first impression is really good and professional. And
Right.
yeah,
So people want to know: is your grandfather still going?
no, that is something, yeah, really sad.
Oh,
He, I went to visit the Cryonics Institute. We decided to work with them. Um, they invited us to the first, to our first SST training a couple of months later. And well, my grandfather, he passed exactly the same weekend when we were on the first training with our medical team. In fact, we arrived to the USA, and I got the text message
oh
that
no.
he had just passed.
Oh,
But well, since the beginning, I knew that it was going to be almost impossible to get it on time for him. But at the same time, I was like, I need to do it because if I don't, well, it's kind of, it's something strange because in 2020 I was like, I need to do this because of my grandpa and because of all the people dying from COVID, right? And I was like, okay, but I don't think my grandpa is gonna last more than 6 months more or something like that. Then he ended up living 4 years more than that.
mm,
And I was at the at 2022. I was like, oh, he's really healthy. He's resisting a lot. So I was like, okay, maybe if I work hard, I'm gonna be able to do all of this on time, right? Because he started getting better. Then at the end, the last months, he got much worse. So yeah, it was like strange because at the beginning I was taking it really easy because I was like, I'm not gonna be on time anyway. Then I started to hurry because he
yeah.
seemed better, and then,
Yeah.
but well, at the same time, it's like maybe his legacy will be allowing other people to. He was like the spark to start this,
Right. Yeah.
and other people will benefit from this.
Yeah. Let me stop you just for a second. Sounds like there's some background sound. Is there anything you can do about that, or is that?
Oh yeah, give me just a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
there were some people talking at the hall.
Yeah. That's okay. We'll cut that. We'll cut the break out. Okay. Do you want to talk a bit about your personal stuff background before we go on to the details of the organization again?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me restart then. Okay, so it's interesting to know a bit about, with I guess, the background. People always wonder what kind of person does this. Obviously, someone like you has to be very committed. This is not easy. It's a very complex procedure. Lots of different aspects to it you have to get right. So, what kind of person actually does this? So, what kind of crazy man are you? Here, go on. What's your background? What did you do before cryonics? I hear
Well,
something about music.
yeah. As I told you, everyone in my family were scientists. And when I was small, I was like, okay, maybe I will be a veterinarian. And my mother is a veterinarian, and she told me, oh, yeah, it's something really cool. And when we were in the university, we used to open dogs, we had cadavers to practice. And I was like, oh, you have cadavers of dogs? That is really sad and shocking. And I was like, okay, no. Then I'm gonna be a human medical doctor. And she was like, oh yeah, human medical doctors, they have corpses of people to practice. And I was like, okay, and I was like, okay, no, then I don't want to do anything related to biology, right? And well, later, as I mentioned, when I was a teenager and I found that nobody was working on a cure for that, or well, at least I was not aware about it. Now I know that there are people who are doing it, but at that time I didn't knew. So yeah, every teenager is a rebel, and I was like, oh, life doesn't has any sense if we are all gonna die. I'm just gonna be dedicate myself to hedonism and enjoying life because we're gonna die anyway. So I ended up going for music. I used to work in the music industry. I had a recording studio and a music production company. We used to produce live shows for emerging bands in 12 states of the country.
Hmm.
Um, I was also a voting member of the Latin Grammys. But it's odd because at the same time that I started dedicating to music, I also started learning about the connectome and all of this. So it's kind of backwards because many people study like a normal university career and they dedicate to music as a hobby. And in my case, it was the opposite. I was working in music and I was studying neuroscience as a hobby. Um,
That's not so odd though, really, because in a way, like especially if you're organizing a gig, getting all those different people together to work together, getting the venue to work, it's not wildly different from a cryonics case where you have to bring all these different people together, make the team work, think about all the contingencies, all the things that can go wrong. So it's actually probably quite good practice.
Yeah, exactly. That is, yeah, that is exactly one of the things that I was gonna say. That uh, because what we used to do in the music production business, it was mostly logistics and how to get from place A to place B, how to get all the equipment on the vehicle, how to coordinate everyone. So yeah, that background was something that I think is really helpful now. Um, at the same time, for example, there are various things from music that are really that make me understand cryonics in a different light. For example, I think that one of the main things that many people get wrong about cryonics, and I include myself in the past about it, is that many people say, okay, but right now cryonic technology is not perfect. Even in the best cases, there is going to be some degree of damage to the brain and the connectome, right? Whether it's due to freezing, due to ischemic damage, there is going to be damage. So the people is going to wake up with that damage, right? Um, and I used to believe the same until I started reading more. I think it was the Wait But Why article about cryonics. When I started learning about what they call neural archaeology, right?
Hmm.
Just like archaeologists right now find some old manuscript and they are able to restore it. Um, it's quite possible that the same would happen with our brains, right? Okay, this brain has this kind of damage, but we can maybe with inference or something like that, we can find out how the connections most likely where each cell should go. And it's something kind of interesting because in audio production we have something very similar. When you have an old recording with a lot of noise, with bad recording quality, and you use something we call dithering, which is a noise correction uh, tool used to upgrade audio that is damaged, right? It's very similar to, for example, what they do in the movie industry to restore really old movies For example, the Lumiere
It's amazing
brothers
how they do that. I
movie.
look at old movies sometimes, like because Natasha likes to watch old movies, like 40s movies, and sometimes they look, really old, and other times they've sharpened them up, and you go, "How did they do that?" It's really remarkable. You would think it was the real thing if you didn't know otherwise. So it is
Yeah,
amazing what you can restore. And of course, Ralph Merkel has made similar arguments about cryptography that information is hard to destroy, and if the brain is like a three-dimensional cryptographic puzzle, you don't have to have perfect fidelity to better reproduce it. But I love your analogy actually with music,
yeah,
audio engineering.
exactly. And it's kind of funny because most of my friends who are in other areas, maybe some of them are engineers or stuff like that, they don't get it because maybe they don't have something so similar in their areas. But in music, I was like, okay, I used to use this all the time when I was in the recording studio. So it's kind of a way of thinking that translates very good into cryonics.
And of course, we don't survive 100% from day to day anyway. We can't lose memory day by day, so we're not completely lossless at any time.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the further back you look, the more you lose. So I think one of the things that people get wrong is they have this idea. I'm not quite sure where it comes from. Maybe it's tied to the idea of a soul, which seems like either you have a soul or you don't. But really, the mind is not like that at all, right? It comes in various degrees of fidelity and various amounts of damage, and each person has to decide for themselves how much would be too much to tolerate. But you don't have to be 100% to consider it successful.
yeah, yeah. Even people who suffer accidents, for example,
Yeah.
when I was a kid, there was a kid in my classroom. He had a terrible accident on a go kart. He almost died. They were able to save him. They had to take him with a helicopter to a hospital in a rush. He managed to survive, but he used to be like a really, yeah, really intelligent boy, really quiet, a little bit. I wouldn't say nerd, but he was like a timid child, right? And after the accident, he became totally the opposite. He became a bully and he was always screaming and doing different things. His personality totally changed, but he survived it. But is he really the same or is he a different person? Well, this is something that kind of shows us that we can change a lot. And we are still the same person, but we can change. And with cryonics, it's like, okay, you had the greatest accident of all, which is you literally you died. So okay, maybe it's to be expected that maybe you are going to be a little different after this big accident called death, but it's still you, right?
Yeah. I want to be different, actually. I want to be improved. I like to come back with some changes made, not just to my body, but to my, the neurology that affects my emotions and personality. I don't think I'm ideal by any means, so I actually want to change. I don't want to come back the same because I like to probably come back mostly the same at first, so I can make those choices myself. But the goal is not to come back and stay exactly the same. That's for sure.
Yeah, we need to improve as much as we can in the future and in the present, right?
Yeah. I mean, even just repairing, let's say you die at 90, or you clinically die at 90, and you're rejuvenated. When you come back, you're going to be different anyway because you're going to be very different from where you're at 90. Your energy level is going to be different. Your sense of vigor, the sharpness of your memory. So actually, hopefully, it will be improved. Maybe there'll be some memory loss, but in some ways, you might actually be very much improved.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
So that's it's funny about your well, it's not funny, but it's sort of funny about your classmate that he could become a bully and probably when he's taken to the principal's office, he could say, "Well, don't blame me; it was my accident. It was because of the accident I'm like
Yeah,
this."
in fact, it used to happen. He was like, he was a bully, but everyone at the same time was like, okay, you have to understand him. And yeah, it was something
Mm,
difficult, but yeah.
yeah. Well, let's go back to the Cryonics organization. Tell us a little bit more about how this actually got started, sort of in specific terms, who you talked to, who got involved first, how you contacted them, Um, and and I don't know how much media attention you might have received, so maybe we can talk about that too, what the public perception is in Mexico. But how did the organization get going, and who helped you do that? Because obviously it's not a one-man show. It takes one
Yeah,
person to really push the lead, but you have to have a team.
yeah. Well, when I decided to do this, I was aware that this was going to be one of the most difficult challenges in the world. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna need the smartest people I can find from many different fields, right? Luckily, since most of my family are scientists, um, they know a lot of people in the National University of Mexico. So, well, all of the doctors on the team are from the National University. As I mentioned before, we had our first training was it was in Minnesota. In fact, there is the Minnesota Rapid Response Team over there, which they have a small SST team over them, and they had a training precisely with biostasis technologies with Ashwin De Wolf, and Resurgence Biomedical also went to train them that time. So they invited us when they found out about what we were doing in Mexico. Uh, that was the first basic training we had.
Mhm.
A couple of years later, we were invited to the European Biostasis Foundation, the non-profit part of Tomorrow Biostasis. And they also gave us training for cryonics perfusion and full cryoprotection. On the medical side, that is how we got trained. The doctors on the team, for example, one of them is the leader from the anatomy lab at the National University. So she had a lot of experience precisely on perfusion of postmortem patients. In her case, it was not with cryoprotectants, but the kind of solutions that are used, for example, to put ink on the circulatory system of bodies so that medical students can learn about it. At the same time, most of the other parts of the team, it was like searching a lot, right? For the legal part, uh, the custom agent, for example, I literally went to the airport to ask the people from the airlines, hey, where can I find a border agent specialized in funeral travel, for example? I knew some people, some lawyers, so they helped me a lot to understand how this could be done, what could be the legal framework to enable this to work.
Mhm.
Um, I also knew some people who had some businesses in Mexico, so I was like, okay, I have this crazy idea. I know it's gonna be really difficult, uh, but I need your advice about uh, how how is a big company managed? How can it be created? Um, Many of them were like, okay, this sounds really crazy. It's gonna be really difficult, but okay, you can do this and this and this and well, the fact of having good mentors for this, uh, at least like makes me feel comforted on the fact that okay, there are people that I can ask for advice if I get stuck at any point. Uh, I know that either way it's still gonna be really difficult, but at least it's like okay, I know that this will be impossible to do alone, and knowing that there are more people on our side is certainly like something that helps a lot.
So people like you mentioned the woman from the was it the National Academy, was it something like that? The perfusionist. Is she personally interested, or is it something she just gets paid to do, or is she personally interested, and so does it partly
Yeah,
volunteer?
In fact, for example, before she learned about cryonics, she was signed up as a body donor for eventually for the Cryonics Institute. She is really young. She is well, not really young, but she's my age. She's in her 30s.
That's young, yes.
But well, she is really interested in advancing science, but at the same time, I really admire her because I think she's one of the most intelligent people I know. Because aside from the medical part, she's involved in some projects regarding artificial intelligence. She also has a marketing company, and for example, well, she has tattoos all over her body. And the first time I met her, she was like, "Oh yeah, because this is I want my body to be like a futuristic suit." Because I'm a transhumanist, and so I was like, okay,
Oh, really? Okay.
it's really interesting because I didn't, yeah, I didn't even have like to convince her about the importance of this nor anything. It was like she had already this kind
Mm,
of mind frame.
found
Yeah.
the right person, yeah.
Hmm.
That's good.
But it was just a coincidence. It was, yeah. Right now, I'm like, okay, it's there have been some people in various parts of the process that I think it's been just luck. The fact that they are so interested in these kind of things.
So where do you stand right now? And you said you're not ready to take on members yet, but how many people do you have uh, on your SST team or other aspects of the organization?
Well, right now our SST team, we are 4 persons. On the well, three, there are 3 doctors and myself. We are 4 for the emergency team. We have one person who helps us with everything related to the legal part. And well, those are the only ones who are like officially a part of Criogenia Avanzada. The custom agents, for example, she doesn't work permanently for us, but she's like, okay, you can call me at any time. It doesn't matter the time of the day. Just call me and I'll help because she already knows about the urgency of this, and it's like, okay, maybe
Mhm.
we are gonna call you at any time, right?
Do you have arrangements with
It's
funeral homes for helping with transport and that kind of thing?
yeah, yeah. Give me a second. Is it okay if I move a little because I think the sun is starting to.
Oh, oh yeah, yeah, getting a
Mhm.
little
Yeah, because
dark.
the sun is
Yeah,
starting
go
to
ahead
set.
and shift a
And
bit.
okay, okay. Should I continue?
Yeah, it's still a little dark.
Okay, let me
Got
know. Is it
more on the right
better?
than
Like,
you got more on the right than the left.
like, is it better like this? No.
Yeah, that's well,
Mm,
right on the shirt. There we go. That's probably better. Yeah,
like this?
yeah, it's not so bright on your shirt. It's
Okay,
better on your
okay.
face. That's good. Actually,
Yeah,
it's quite bright now.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I didn't take into account the window.
and tell it to stop.
Sorry.
So, do you? So you mentioned being trained by Biostasis Technologies and other people. Do you have contacts with other SST organizations like Suspended Animation or the Tomorrow Biostasis team for training or for actually helping on cases? Do you have some kind of arrangement, or is it too early to have arranged anything with them yet?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, we have met with Tomorrow Bio and also with Suspended Animation. We were trained by both of them. And we also have been in contact with some other teams around the world who are interested in creating cryonics capabilities in their respective countries. There are some teams that are starting to form in Spain, in Argentina, in India. Even there are some people interested in creating even in Ukraine, um, in Israel too. So I'm constantly talking with people who are interested in doing this because, well, I think that the only way for cryonics to really take off is if we are able to eventually have a worldwide network of SST response teams. Because, well, at least in my case, but I have also seen it or heard it from many other people my age, um, is that okay? Maybe, well, for example, in my case, one of my grandfathers was from Spain. He ended up in Mexico because of a war. Um, I know some people who there is also a cryonicist who is very well known in Canada, but her grandmother was from China and she ended up in Canada for the same reason because of a war. There are many people from Mexico who end up living in the USA or in Europe. So, for at least in my case, I was like, okay, what will happen if I sign up with, I don't know, with a company in the USA or in Europe or in Mexico, and 50 years from now I end up living in a totally different country, which I don't expect right now, but in 50 years maybe many things can happen, right? So
Yeah.
we will not like to sign up a contract with a company if there is the risk that at the end we will end up very far away from it, right? So one of my main goals in cryonics is making sure that eventually there are at least one team in every country of the world, and ideally in every major city, at least a team that can get to you in maximum 2 hours or something like that, right?
Hmm.
And well, right now we are still beginning, but what I would like to do is like learn all the ropes of how to do this, how to get all the equipment, and then replicating it in as many cities as possible, and helping these other teams do the same things that we have been doing here in Mexico for 4 years or five in much less time.
Yeah. So to clarify, then you consult with other organizations like Suspend Animation, Tomorrow Biostasis, but as far as I know, for instance, Suspend Animation, last I heard, isn't willing to do anything outside the USA, so they're not going to come and help presumably on cases. So it's still up to your local team completely. Is that right?
Yeah, suspend animation has always been only in the USA, and there was also the ICE team, which is
Right.
international. But well, the first time that I tried to contact them, I never got a response. Um, I tried a couple of times later, and the same happened. And I was like, well, I was really worried because I was like, if I'm not able to contact them now, how could a client contact them in case of an emergency, right? I have met Aaron Drake later, and he even was one of the people who trained us in Minnesota. And well, he told me they were having some troubles with the email settings or something like that. So maybe that's why he was not able to receive it. But either way, I think it's really important that even if a team has flight capabilities, I would prefer, for example, somebody. Yeah, so even if I'm able to travel to another country to help a cryonicist, I would recommend that person to instead find a local team in his own country because your life literally depends on having someone reliable as close to you as possible.
Yeah.
Um, Over here, for example, we have a provider who can get us private jets to get as quickly as possible to patients in remote areas. And that is something great. But either way, I would prefer creating extra SST teams in those remote areas when it's possible, because even if you are able to fly, anything can happen, right? The storms from a couple of months ago in the USA, here in Mexico, sometimes there are volcanic activities, and planes can't take off because of the ashes. Sometimes flights are canceled, or anything can happen, right? So ground transport is much more reliable than air
Mhm.
transport in many cases.
Yeah, well, just this week in the U.S. on the East Coast, it's beautiful here in Arizona, but in the East Coast and a lot of the country, it's been heavy rainfall. And
Hmm.
I had a doctor's appointment yesterday, and he wasn't there because he couldn't get a flight back. So things can happen at any time. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember when this was, 15 or 20 years ago, there was the big volcanic eruption in Iceland, and it shut down air traffic, which was actually a problem for Cryonics case at the time for Alcor. So, yeah, you're definitely right that air transport could be problematic. If you can do it on the ground, that certainly helps.
Yeah,
Do you have
even
a,
2 years ago during the Global Cryonics Summit, I remember that many people who attended had problems because of the, I think it was the outage of CrowdStrike or some internet company that took down even the computers
oh,
at the
the air traffic
airports.
control problems? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so it can be human errors, forces of nature, but you need to have some other backup plan.
yeah. Whenever I go to conferences somewhere, I always try to get there a day early just because of that factor. But of course, you can't do that in cryonics cases. You have to be there when you have to be there.
Yeah.
Do you have any issues getting patients out of the country? I mean, you may not have done that yet, but have you looked into that? Are there any difficult regulations? In some countries, it's very difficult. There's requirements that that you bury a body or that you cremate it right away, or they just make it difficult. What is the situation getting a patient from Mexico to, say, Cryonics Institute?
Well, luckily, if it's done in the first 20, no, in the first 72 hours after the pronouncement of legal death, you can do it without the need of embalming the body. So this is great because precisely our goal is to be able to finish the whole process much in much less time than 72 hours, right? So
Yeah.
if we are over that time, it means that we did something wrong. So that is perfect. I did some well various meetings with the director of the health institute in Mexico. So she, after explaining all what we were doing and what we were trying to achieve, she told me, okay, I have checked all the legal framework for this, and this can be done as long as you hurry up and do it in less than 72 hours. So in that regard, we are pretty covered.
Have you yet talked to any hospitals in the area and seen what they think of it, and what you'd have to do to get a patient released quickly?
Well, right now we haven't checked with hospitals right now. We are, well, in my case, for example, all of my grandfathers decided to have their last days at home. The part of the hospitals, indeed, I think it can be an issue. I have heard that it's been an issue in various cryonic cases in Alcor. Right now, well, part of the challenges that we have is that there is a lot to be done, but not enough time to do it all. So, well, right now we haven't done the precise part of going to every hospital. And in fact, I think that one of the most important things will be like first checking, okay, this will be our first potential patient. We should check with him, okay, which is your preferred hospital? Where is it most likely that you will go in case of an emergency? And we should check with those ones first.
Mhm.
But well, the doctors on our team have very good relationships with most of the main hospitals in Mexico City. So I don't think it will be so difficult to do it once they explain to them all the process. And luckily, I would say I have noticed that in the last few years, after all what Tomorrow Bio has been doing to raise awareness about cryonics, I think the public perceptions of about cryonics is much more. It's much better right now than some years ago. Some years ago, many hospitals and doctors were like skeptic about this, and right now, I think that the tide is starting to change. So this is something that I'm really grateful about. That it's maybe it's the moment to that cryonics will have this opportunity to grow more.
You mentioned that your grandfathers chose to spend their last years at home. Is that common? Do people go to hospices? Like it's quite common in the US. If you know that you don't have that much time left and there's nothing that can be done for you, you go to a hospice, which can be hospice at home or it can be an actual hospice. How does that work in Mexico? Do many people go to a hospice? Is it mostly hospice at home? Which would be better for cryonics from your point of view?
Well, in Mexico, one of the, I would say, one of the advantages of Mexico is that we don't have much of a culture of elderly homes. There are various elderly homes in Mexico City, but most families prefer to stay with their grandparents or parents until the very end. In most families, yeah, most families don't leave their old people to live alone. So I think that is something very good because there are not many cases of people, old people living alone and dying without nobody finding out about this. Um, another advantage over here is that the cost of labor is much lower than in the USA or other countries. So, for example, hiring a personal nurse or an assistant to help with the care of elderly people, even at home, is much more affordable.
Mhm.
So, for example, maybe in the USA it will be impossible to have someone go to your home to help with caring about your grandpa. But in Mexico, it's relatively affordable, and in many cases they can be, for example, nurses who also have experience with placing IV lines and stuff like that, um, and most importantly with monitoring patients, right? So this is something that can help a lot because
Mm.
in most cases maybe there will be a nurse with the patient already there who can tell us, hey, I'm starting to take signs that this person might not last more than 24 hours or something like that, so you should hurry or stuff like that. And in the cases where people decide to go to elderly homes, um, it's the same. They are not so expensive as in the USA. So I have the comfort of knowing that there will not be so many cases of people dying alone at home, right?
Because that could be good or it could have a downside too. It depends on the family, of course, and how cooperative the
Yeah.
family is.
Mhm.
So one thing you'll have to experience over time is learning how to deal with families and how to talk to them. Because one person who's good at doing medical procedures or running the organization isn't necessarily the best person for talking to families. So you need someone who's really
Mhm.
empathic and knows how to let them grieve, but also get out of the way quickly, which is obviously a very tricky thing to do.
Yeah.
That's a whole
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I would say that is one of my main skills. Because, for example, it's that I'm not a doctor myself. I studied neuroscience, but I'm not a doctor of the rest of the. I don't know much about medicine outside of the brain. But what I'm really good at is connecting people, talking with people, making friends. I think working in the music industry helped me a lot with that. So yeah, one of the issues with cryonics, as well as most scientific industries, is that many people who work in it are like very focused on the science part, and they don't talk a lot with a lot of people and stuff like that. And what I bring to the team is like getting everyone together and being able to talk with the patients and their families and making them know that okay, we are on your side. We are humans. We understand what you are feeling, and this is what your relative wants to be done for him. So how can we make it possible, right?
Good, yeah, that's important. So let me ask you about this. One thing that's been a very positive development, I think, for cryonics, although it hasn't been much use so far, is what's sometimes called death with dignity. It goes by different names, which has been spreading in the USA. More and more states are having law like that. Because Canada has that, a number of European countries. Do you have anything like that at all in Mexico yet? Or and if not, are there good prospects for that in the future? The advantage just being, of course, that you can actually basically make an appointment to be cryopreserved. You can decide when to do it and have the team come by, and then you can take the meds and you can go when you're ready. Is that an option in Mexico right now? Or will it be in the future?
Now, right now in Mexico, euthanasia is not allowed. Um, so yeah, that's gonna be an obstacle. At the same time, well, I couldn't believe it at first, but now I understand it. In my case, for example, my family is like we love each other. We stood with my grandpa until the end. But for example, when I started talking with the director of the funeral company that works with us, uh, well, I talked with him about cryonics, how it works, how it's usually funded with life insurance, and he was telling me about the risks and what could complicate it if family members will not agree to it, or if family members would want to keep the life insurance for themselves. And I was like, oh, but this is not something really frequent, right? And he was like, no, this is something that happens all the time, and the family members are always trying to screw up the other people. And he was telling me, for example, about sometimes people prepay for their burial service, and sometimes family members try to steal even that, and have them like uh, go to the public graves without name or anything just to
Mm,
get the prepayment back and stuff like that. And I was like, okay,
yeah,
I can't believe
happens a
that
lot
this
more often
happens.
than people would want to think. Yeah.
Yeah, and the problem with death with dignity, from what I heard from doctors, and it's a problem not only in Mexico, but it could be even in the USA or the rest of the world, is that if someone, for example, has Alzheimer or any condition that makes them be like not completely aware of what is happening, maybe greedy family members can say, "Hey, grandpa, you should sign up this form because it's to get candy or whatever, right?" And it's a form for death for dignity, and they can be like, "Oh, he decided to kill himself," and it's in fact just the family members trying to get rid of the elderly person, right? And when I saw it from that light and understood that there are some people who are not great family members, right now I'm like, okay, yeah, death with dignity definitely will be great for cryonics, but at the same time, I know that it's very risky for people who are not into cryonics. So I understand society being like, yeah, really careful about
It
this
needs
because,
safeguards. It really needs safeguards. I think it's a bigger problem
yeah.
when it comes with a government healthcare system because, if you're paying for it privately, then they should do what you want to do. But if it's a state system, they want to save money. And so, like in Canada, there's a lot of controversy in Canada that the state is pushing for people to die early, so they don't have to spend so much on medical care. So yeah, it depends a lot
Mhm.
on the context and on the protective laws. But there's no doubt that can be a very good thing for cryonics. Basically no delay
Yeah.
at all if you can schedule it.
Mhm.
Yeah. I have to go back a little bit because a couple of times you said things which made me go, "Ooh, no!" You talked about living forever and curing death or solving death, and I want to push back on a little bit as I tend to do because
Yeah.
with
I
anti-aging
know you are
advice, we're not
against it.
actually solving death, right? We're solving, hopefully, getting around death from aging, but that doesn't mean
Mhm.
that we won't be. In fact, I'm just writing a blog piece on this right now. There'll still be other things that can kill us, and so we can't really expect to live forever. We can hope to keep reducing the risks over time, but even for thousands of years, it doesn't necessarily mean we'll live forever. So I just want to sort of put that caution in there.
Yeah, yeah. I know that you hate the concept of calling it immortality or living forever, and yeah, you are totally right. Um, at the same time, I would certainly would like to live, well, if not forever, at least indefinitely. And in fact, for example, in my personal case, I would be like, okay, please, before you reawaken me, even if you have the technology to restart my body, don't do it until you can do a full scan of my connectome, so that if I get out of the cryonics facility and I get run over by a boss or whatever exists in the future, and there is no remnants of my brain, it can be restored something, right? And
Mm-hmm.
maybe you can make another copy of that computer in case that the backup of my connectome is lost in that computer too. So because yeah, for me it will be like terrible to come back in the future just to die again from something different, and
Yeah.
even worse if my body is destroyed and I'm not able to be cryopreserved again.
Yeah. Well, yeah, backups are the hope for the long run. I think you can actually scan and backup, but then of course you've got to make sure you make your backups frequently enough. Otherwise, there could be, you think, oh, I forgot to do it for 10 years. Then, have you survived? That's kind of one of those things where it's not 100%. It's a matter of degree. So
Yeah.
ideally, you want something that's broadcasting from your brain, and that's being, of course, then there's privacy issues. So there's all kinds of complex issues. But hopefully, sometime in the future, if we can do backups, that will greatly reduce the chance of really dying 100% at least.
Mhm.
But in the meantime, of course, there are. I'm actually just writing this blog piece right now. I'll be out in a few days looking at if we cured aging today, how long would we live? And basically, it's like 1 or 2 thousand years at current death rates from accidents and homicides, that kind of thing, depending on where you are. But we've been reducing those risks over time. Also, airplane accidents, even car accidents have been going down per mile traveled. And some things like falls, a lot of people fall over and break their hip and get an infection and die. If we've defeated aging, we should be able to solve those kind of problems. But
Mhm.
there's going to be things like homicides, wars, asteroid strikes, who knows what. So there's always some of those issues. So I tend to be cautious of the word immortality for that reason, because it sounds religious, and I think it's implying an extreme degree of perfection in the process that's probably not plausible, at least anytime soon. So I just like to keep that in mind. But yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully with uploading, actually that brings us to another question that you wanted to discuss, which are your thoughts on brain emulation versus biological revival. Does the organization take a position on that? Do you leave that up to each individual? What do you see as more plausible, perhaps biological revival, or do you think people will actually be uploaded?
Well, at the beginning, some 20 years ago, I was really interested in whole brain emulation. And I was like, okay, it doesn't matter if I revive as a computer, it will still be me, right? Right now, I'm not so sure. I still believe that it will still be you, even if it's in a different body, even if it's a simulation in a computer. I think most likely it will still be you. But at the same time, I have to admit, I don't know yet, right? And nobody knows. We will not know it until it happens, and we find a way to measure if this person is really the same person, or if it's just a twin who believes that he's the other person, but he really is not. So, in my personal opinion, what should be done is every cryonics patient should first be revived in his own original biological body, even if it takes more time that a digital emulation. And once that he has been revived in his original body, then maybe he can see how the world works in the future. He can learn more about if people have already been uploaded. He can learn about this, talk with people, learn about their experience, and then decide, okay, maybe I want to be, if I have an accident, instead of reviving me in my same body, instead of cryopreserving me again, then get me into a simulated body or a bioprinted body, or something else. But I think that the first revival should be done in the same body, so that the person can make an informed decision about what he wants to do
Mhm.
when the technology is already there and he can see how it works. Because right now, yeah, we really don't know, right?
It's all
So
speculative right now. Yeah, I think it very
yeah.
much depends on what kind of architecture the emulation has been run on it. I do make the distinction of simulation and
Mhm.
emulation. A simulation externally behaves like you and may speak like you, and I can certainly see having something like that quite quite soon from feeding it all the information about our lives. But that doesn't mean it has any kind of internal life at all. So I want to make sure it's an actual, proper emulation, not just merely a simulation. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it might be good enough for my friends to talk to, but it wouldn't be me. So yeah, I don't think we have a good theory of that yet. There's still not really even agreement on what consciousness is. So how do we even know what to look for? But yeah, for instance,
Yes.
I don't think current LLM AIs, I don't think are remotely conscious at all. I don't think the right kind of architecture. So I wouldn't want to be replaced by one of those simulating my behavior.
ChatGPT pretending to be much more.
Yeah, probably could do a decent job. Well, let's to close maybe just briefly, since obviously the longer we can stay alive before having to go into biostasis, the more time there is to improve the science, more time to improve the logistics. Like in Mexico, obviously, you give it another 30 years, things hopefully will have developed tremendously. So that really means that also we want to be in good condition when we're cryopreserved, and that means being in good health, right? So I know some cryonists don't really do anything to bother with the health. Some do. I know you personally have some interest in that. What is your personal health or life extension program at this point?
Well, in the past, yeah, 20 years ago, when I believed that my interest was the scanning of the connectome, and I was like, okay, this is gonna come when I'm 80 years old. I was really interested in maximizing longevity because I was like, okay, this is gonna take a long time. So, just as you mentioned, every extra day that I can live would improve the chances. What I like about cryonics is that it's a technology that already exists right now. So I'm like, okay, I don't need to be so extremely careful because even if I don't make it that long, at least cryonics can help me. Either way, I try to be as healthy as possible. I exercise every day, even though I hate exercise. I try to sleep really well. I don't smoke. Um, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, I wouldn't like to live like Ryan Johnson, for example, with a super strict regime that would be like, okay, I'm not enjoying life at all, right? Um,
Well, he's an extreme, right? It's not even
yeah,
true that most things he does are making any difference. So,
but
uh,
well, if your thinking is like, okay, I need to survive because the technology to live forever is going to come, but I don't know why. I think it's the rational approach, right? He's sacrificing enjoyment for some years in order to have many extra years in the future. But what I like about cryonics is precisely that it's like, okay, I don't need to be so. I don't need to make such a big sacrifice because cryonics is already a technology that exists right now, even if it's not perfect. But well, at the same time, what I have to admit is cryonics makes me be much more careful in certain things, right? For example, during the pandemic, I had friends that were like, "Oh, I don't care. I'm gonna go party because life is too short and I have to enjoy it." And I was like, "No, I'm not gonna get out of my home at all because even if the probability is small, I don't want to take risks, right?" I avoid driving late at night, for example. I avoid going to dangerous places. Um, yeah, I try to I'm not like trying to be super careful in many things, but I avoid unnecessary risks as much as possible. But well, I try to keep a balance of everything.
yeah. Well, I think one reason it's important to take care of health is that it affects actually the quality of your cryopreservation. And I've looked
Yeah.
at different patients. So I look at someone like Fred Chamberlain, the co-founder of Alcor, and he
Hmm.
took really good care of himself. So even though he died legally of cancer, his cardiovascular system was in good shape. He got a good perfusion. Other patients we've had, all their blood vessels are weak, and it may be very hard to even get into the blood vessels. So that can affect the perfusion of the brain as well. So I think there's a good reasons actually to take care of your cardiovascular system for that reason. And of course, maintaining muscle and balance so you don't fall over and break something and get an infection and die earlier than necessary, which happens to a lot
Hmm.
of people. So there is a kind
Yeah.
of an important payoff there. Yeah. Okay, so probably time for us to wrap up. Do you have any thoughts on the long-term your vision for cryonics in Mexico? How you see things happening based on the resources you hope to be available?
Well, the main thing that I would like to be able to achieve in the future, not just for Mexico but worldwide. Uh, well, the first thing, obviously, as I mentioned, is trying to get SST teams in as many cities as possible. And then the next important step, I think, is well, I would like to eventually be able to contribute to getting enough scale with cryonics to reduce the costs. Because, well, 100 years ago, cremation was something that nobody did. It was even considered a sin. And now most people choose cremation over burial, right? So if we could do something similar with cryonics, more people choosing cryonics over cremation or burial, the economies of scale could reduce the cost so much that it will be almost equivalent to many conventional, well, at least some high-end burials, right? There are people right now who pay to have I don't know, musicians play at their funerals, or a lot of flowers, or rent big halls for people to speak at their funerals and stuff like that. And cryonics could be much more affordable than all of that, right? So, but to do that, we need to, well, we need to have many patients every week instead of one patient every year, right? So,
Yeah.
if I am able to contribute to spread cryonics, and eventually we are, I would like to be preserved, but well, I would like to wake up in the future with all of my friends and my family, and as many people as possible, right? And
Yeah.
right now, many people are like, oh, I'm gonna wake up alone in the future. And what I would like to tell them is, no, we could wake up with all our loved ones if we are able to build enough scale for this.
All right. Yeah, it's kind of an unknown as to how much we could reduce costs. I know that Ralph Mucker wrote a piece on that some years ago where he looked at the economies of scale for storage, and I think that's quite feasible. It's probably more difficult to get economies of scale for transport, stabilization, that kind of thing. Although if you have a full-time team and they keep them busy, it should reduce costs presumably over the current model.
Mhm.
So yeah, hopefully the costs will come down over time. But I want to say that it's great that you're doing what you're doing in Mexico. It takes a special kind of personality to actually start something like that. So I'm always admire someone who does that. So keep it up, and best wishes to you. And we'll keep track of your progress.
Thank you, Max. And Max, I admire you a lot for what you've done. You were one of the first persons that I used to watch the YouTube videos about what you were doing in cryonics. So I also want to thank you for what you have done for cryonics.
Oh, thank you. Right. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. It was fun.
Same.
Take care. Bye bye.